Gary, welcome.
Hey Joe, you're right. What an opening weekend of Premier League football that was.
Well, I asked you and Damien Delaney in our bumper preview last week, is there a chance Arsenal could, walk the league? I'd like to rephrase that as it's hard to see anything else right now.
No, it is. In terms of where Arsenal were placed, of course, they look so strong. The signings that they've made as well look good, but that's not really the big story. It's just how much in transition, how much in flux their rivals are. And even like Manchester City getting that late home win, you don't look at them and think that they're going to cruise. They had real difficulties getting past Bournemouth. You look at Liverpool in terms of how good they were going forward at times, not all the time. The final third pass, shot, decision making wasn't particularly good. And it looked so open in midfield. And then you just think of Manchester United and just think, wow, them and Tottenham were just the big stories of the weekend in terms of how poor they both were.
Yeah. Well, give us one quick word on Arsenal then, and we'll move on to those big stories. Havertz, Saka, Odegaard with the goals, 3-0, Friday
Yeah,
night. Good vibes in the stadium.
yeah.
Arsenal almost playing with a certain kind of authority and swagger of champions, and they know they're champions. So it was just like
Yeah.
it's just Declan Rice off you come after an hour. It's perfection really as a start goes.
Yeah, when we talked about him in terms of how the other teams would be looking from the outside, looking in at Arsenal and thinking, listen, they look so strong. They all know exactly their roles. There's so much competition for places within their squad that, I mean, we joked about Konza coming in at centre back and still not identifying their real issue at centre forward, but he strengthens them yet again. And it looks like Arteta, even in finding solace for that 30 million or so investment, when a lot of the talk at the time was Vinicius Junior coming in, he's just finding players that are just elevating that team slowly but surely. The squad looks so strong. They're in such a good place. And you're right, the Emirates has never, ever been as good a place as it is now to go and play at. The atmosphere is incredible. And there's a belief now, and it's just absolutely oozing out of everyone associated with Arsenal, that this could be a real period of domination.
Yeah, even that bloody song has really landed, hasn't it? I mean, they're ticking every box.
Well, it is, because the song is brilliant. I don't know if you've heard the full version, but if you grew up in around North London, it's so emotive in terms of what it actually talks about. But the crowd have taken on to it. And what has been good, Joe, is that now even the commentators are stopping talking over it. They never talk over, the Anfield song or any of the iconic songs. And now they're letting it breathe. And for everyone else looking in, it probably is annoying. But for Arsenal, this is a great time to be a supporter.
And what are the lines? So, North London, obviously.
It's just everything in terms of talking about the Cali down to King's Cross. If you heard the song, Joe.
Oh yeah, I have, but obviously I don't.
No,
The King's
that's what I
Cross.
mean.
It doesn't stir my heart when I hear
No,
the King's Cross.
it's just so well written in terms of how, if you grew up in and around North London, listen, the Tottenham fans will tell you it don't stir that many emotions for them, but it's just so well written. And for Arteta, it's another stroke of his managerial quality in terms of just identifying that song and then put it into the ground. There's so many little changes. In terms of what he's done, the work there, Arteta, I know it was always the stick to beat him with that he couldn't get over the line, but now he has. It kind of then opens up to everything else he's done in terms of slowly but surely strengthening that squad. I mean, that is an example to everyone else in terms of the fact that he got rid of players that he did not feel could contribute. The culture was completely wrong, whether it be Aubameyang, all those type of players. The level of quality of player was poor for a team of Arsenal that they were never going to win. And then Edu had come out and said, a sporting director, that this Arsenal squad is full of 26 and 27-year-olds who don't win. Yeah. So he had to get all them out. And then to do so, because he didn't have that financial muscle then, he had to let all those kind of young players who came through the ranks play. Now suddenly he's in such a position that it's unlikely that you're ever going to come through the ranks and make an impact at Arsenal because the level is that high. It might have to be an iconic, once-in-a-generation player like Max Dowman who does it. Whether or not he still does it, we don't know because he's so young and there's so many pitfalls ahead of him as such. But it's just remarkable what he's done.
Yeah. So that's the perfect start on a Friday night. Next game is Saturday lunchtime. Manchester United away to Hull. I mean, it's worth stating. Obviously, it's away from home is a little bit tricky, but Hull are the favourites to be bottom of the league here. Hull are the first team in 16 years to finish sixth in the Championship and get a place in the Premier League. They are. This is who United were up against. It's a very gentle start, all things considered, and they were beaten 2-0. What struck you about the performance? Like, what happened here?
Do you know what happened is what Hull actually looked at United in terms of their setup. And I felt last year that Carrick and his assistant Steve Holland gave them a structure out of possession that made it easier for them to cope in a way that they didn't know what they were doing. They're at sixes and sevens under Amarin. They didn't know exactly where they were supposed to be. Now suddenly they're a 4-2-4, and they try and put that front four in a bit of a high press, make it difficult for you to play out. But if you do get over that four, they quickly drop back and there's a defensive structure. Then Hull, obviously, don't really normally play free at the back. Did a few times towards the back end in terms of getting up through the playoffs last year, but that's not their go-to system. But they've obviously looked at United and felt, do you know what? That system's so easy to get past on a wing-back system. We saw it. 4 minutes into it, a basic ball from the goalkeeper just clicked into that wing-back. He's got all the time and space. And then suddenly those two central midfielders who are isolated to cover the whole width of the pitch can't get close enough. McBurney comes off his defenders and you think, surely go with him. He's not going to really threaten you in behind. They don't. And then they are up against it straight away. The lack of kind of physical presence in that Manchester United team was remarkable. And then with every passing minute, that whole team just played with energy, desire, physicality, and United just couldn't match it. It was incredible to see how that unfolded first game of the season.
And would it surprise you, or maybe more so if you're a United fan, would it worry you that they didn't make accommodations for that on the fly, that Carrick didn't make adjustments to team shape, that they kept being exposed in that way?
Yeah, no, it would absolutely worry me. And I think Carrick, obviously as an iconic player himself, probably thinks, well, at times it's all well and good looking to the bench, but they still got some really experienced players in there and just adjust slightly. But it was little things like balls up to McBurney, just weren't winning the first contact. Suddenly then weren't picking up the second balls. You think about Mbeumo and that chance where he's letting the ball come to him and then the whole just swarm all over him, force the corner, they get in. And then, of course, the two goals. The most basics of defending is just balls into your box. And that is also... That's so often the kind of leveler from a team that comes up from the Championship. If you just match that, you don't expect them to open you up in play as such. Just match that physicality, and United were just woeful at it. I just look at them and think, and we touched on it, Joe, didn't we, last week with Damo, and we're saying about that back four. And you're kind of thinking that there's a new era, there's a new manager, there's another chance for these players, but these are still the same players. They're still the same players that will revert to type, that ultimately are good footballers, because you don't play at the level you do if you're not a good footballer. But they're not good enough footballers to get Manchester United back to where they think they belong and where they should be, really, in terms of the investment they've made.
Yeah, so if someone looks at the stats and sees United 70% possession, 21 shots to Hull's 8, 6 corners to Hull's 1, XG, for what it's worth, 1.81 United, 1.31 Hull. Is it wrong to look at that and think, oh, United must have been quite good and on the front foot and Hull just sucker punched them twice?
Listen, I love stats in terms of how you can use them, but sometimes you just have to watch a game and see, how does it feel? How does it look? And it never felt like that, did it? It felt like Hull were causing them all sorts of problems. And I do believe that, these players, if you give them time and space, are very good footballers. We've seen it with Manchester City as well. We certainly saw it with Tottenham. If you think about their two centre-backs, are brilliant at build-up play. But Brentford and Hull, Brentford more so probably, ask them to do things that you needed to be able to do as an old-fashioned type centre-back, is win your first contact, win your second balls, make sure you're physically strong, that you don't let the game or the momentum of the game get away from you. And it just looked beyond United and Spurs. And I get so frustrated with myself at times, because obviously I'm experienced in terms of playing, and you can get sucked in. I can understand it with the supporters where these new players come in, especially at Tottenham with all the money that they've spent, and you're thinking, this is a new dawn, we're going to be so good. And you think, the reality is that it's still Brentford. It's still Brentford at home, and they don't get enough credit. I don't know why people don't suddenly start saying, well, listen, Brentford at home, that's no surprise to beat Tottenham the way they are, the way they have been over the last couple of seasons, irrespective of all the money and the change of personnel.
So United then, to kind of, because it is just...
Yeah, sorry, I keep going back, but I can't help but see the similarities in terms of, United and Spurs and the struggles that they've had over the last couple of seasons, despite both of them going deep into that European final a couple of seasons ago, because it just papers over the cracks.
Yeah. So it's a continuation for United of everything you guys said last week. The defense isn't good enough. I mean, outside of Martinez, maybe I didn't get the impression you or Damien liked any of their defenders. And then Tielemans and Santos in midfield, probably flattered to deceive a touch. I mean, Carlos Baliba coming in is a very good, energetic player, is really good on the ball, can get turns. So, I mean, he's an interesting addition, but he wouldn't be the first good player to go to United and somehow sink, so there's still a question mark there. Rashford on his return, do anything for you?
No, not really. In terms of we're just going over old ground here.
Yeah.
If Rashford runs around and puts a real shift in, then he has ability to affect games, and whether or not he will do that, we will see. I won't hold my breath as such, but even the fact that he'll be fit, he doesn't start the game, Dorgu's does, and you're kind of thinking, I just don't. I look at United and I thought in Burma, I was so impressed with him against Leeds at Croke Park. He looked so sharp, and I thought, yeah, now this is different. But then I look at the setup of that team and I'm thinking, so many times United were getting into those kind of dangerous areas, put a ball in a box, and there was no one there. Like, and Burma was often in right wing position crossing, and Cunha's coming deep at 10. So as much as you're thinking you're up against United, your first game of the season as a promoted team, I did think that they look relatively comfortable. And John Egan in the centre of a back three. I mean, I love that story about John. I really do. I think it's indicative of his whole career. He had a dreadful injury as a young player, and he came back, dropped down to the lower leagues with Gillingham, fought all his way back up, then got another bad injury at Sheffield United. They kind of didn't treat him particularly well. Goes off the whole, a team that last year was expected to get relegated from the Championship. They do so well, and now, lo and behold, 12 months later, he's starring in a back three position and looks so good there.
Yeah, it's a great one. One last one, in Buomo, in those first couple of games for Carrick, he played through the middle and he looked devastating.
Yeah.
And then he just moved out to the right. I've never really understood that. He looked like they need a centre forward. I mean, Šeško was kind of, there's a massive question mark there as well. And Buomo was so good those first few games, and they just said, no, you're right winger. Do you agree with that, or what's your read on that?
I know he can excel in those positions, but it's a needs must. You're right. And Cunha, another fabulous forward player, but not an out-and-out number 9. And you're right to reference Šeško, because he comes on, Joe, and he gets two of the type of deliveries and crosses into the box that a big centre forward, and bearing in mind, he looks like he's putting half a stone in muscle. He wants to be that robust type centre forward. Yeah. They're the type of crosses you dream of. And there's such a mess, the two headers. And you think, as big as you are, as strong as you are, you can't actually head the ball anywhere near the level you expect from a top centre forward or an old-fashioned number 9. And I don't know, it's easy to kind of go overboard. And I know everyone will do in terms of United, but you kind of thinking last year, they've just given themselves an opportunity out of possession where there's a safety net, where there's difficult moments, just drop back into that low block. But they just couldn't sustain it. They just could not repel how quick and energetic Hull were. And there were so many times, Joe, where the ball's going up to McBurney, and I'm thinking, okay, get tight. He's not going to run you in behind. You don't really want any balls coming into the box against him because he's a strong centre forward. And yet, the Maguire, Heaven, who's got pace, they're dropping about 15 yards off him. And I'm thinking, no wonder Tielemans can't get anywhere near anyone in midfield because the space is too big.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's been a mad issue, a big issue with United for years. When Maguire plays, they're way too deep. And he just doesn't want to come out. So a final one then. It's very early days for this question. Obviously, I know that, but bear with me a second. So they have Ipswich next week, and then the fixture list gets a bit tricky. But I still think it's crazy that Michael Carrick is the Manchester United manager. I mean, they started off like a train under him. Everybody was happy and they're full of energy, and that was kind of like those wins against Arsenal and Manchester City. That was kind of what was so kind of good about it, like the energy. And Bruno, Bruno's released as 10. He's not stuck being a 6, and they're all happier in a shape more familiar to them. But the facts are this: the performances tapered off the longer the season went on under Carrick. That is a fact. The performances did taper off, and this is a guy who has 19 Premier League matches to his name. I mean, Manchester United have a complete rookie as manager who would be nowhere near this job but for the fact he played for the club. Now, that is once again heart-ruling head. And once again, they're in this very strange position, and they haven't backed him over the summer. So it's like, are we in? Are we out? What is it?
Yeah.
It's a bad situation again, I think.
Yeah, it is. And it is early. And I took a bit of confidence in terms of Michael getting the job, the fact that he had Steve Holland. And I think he's a brilliant coach in terms of, so that's a great ally to have alongside you in terms of where you're going. But you're so right to reference the fact that, Joe, and though that I was at the Emirates, United were brilliant that day against Arsenal. They were so good. And that performance against City was just incredible in terms of the energy, the desire, everything. So once you see that as a decision maker in terms of whether or not he gets the job, you're thinking, listen, he is impacting on these players. He simplified it. They're responding to it. There is a cautionary tale, of course there is, with Solskjaer because of that run that he went when he initially got it. And you're thinking, okay, how much substance is behind that?
Yeah.
And you're right. I just don't know. I don't know, looking at that United and thinking, where do you go with this? Because I like the signings of Cunha. I like Mbeumo, players who have played in the Premier League. They know what they're doing. I like the business of Tielemans. Not for one moment do I think he's the answer in terms of athleticism in midfield, but I could see the merit in it in terms of a relatively low fee in today's modern terms, in terms of £34 million, activate that release clause, whatever it was, get him in there, a bit of experience, help the younger ones. But it's just alarming that, as much as they look good in terms of pre-season and their build-up play, and you can see that, and this works well, it just feels that as soon as someone just runs directly at them, they just can't cope. And the fact is, as soon as someone plays high-tempo football, that defensive line just drops deeper and deeper. And I just don't know how, as a coach, you're looking at that and you're thinking, how do you change that? How do you change that with these players who have continually failed in that Manchester United? Continually failed for the level Manchester United are normally used to.
We were very interested last week in how Liverpool would shape up against Newcastle. So that finished 2-2. Just a quick word on Newcastle under Matthias Heisler. I just think they get the ball forward quickly, don't they?
Well, this is it. This is my point, is that all these kind of players who play at the top clubs, when, a couple of seasons ago, the opposition would sit back, they're quite subservient, trying to do a low block, stop them that way. Now, on the back of Iriola, like we said, at Bournemouth, and Pep saying, this is the way teams are going, they're going straight for the jugular. That's exactly what this Newcastle team were doing. You're thinking they were dropping deep, and then suddenly that front four just went. And it was incredible because, say, for example, that first goal that Elanga gets, all the three central midfielders, the two holding ones and Verts at 10, are caught ahead of the play. They counter the length of the pitch. You're thinking, wow, that's poor. But then if you think about the second goal, when Vissa gets it, all three around him, and he still gets away from it in terms of the Brentford Vissa that we associated with Newcastle Bayern, but we saw so little of him last year in a Newcastle shirt. That does look exciting in terms of that playing with real clarity in terms of, as soon as you get that ball, just go for the throw. Don't be looking for those sideward passes. Just go at these players. And it exposes so many of these top class, supposedly defenders in the Premier League, because they just cannot cope with the directness and intensity. I'm loving watching it. Even as an old-fashioned defender, I'm loving that these kind of teams, like Newcastle yesterday, so good. Brentford under Keith Andrews and Damien Duff last year and again this year, just going after teams, not allowing teams to feel comfortable within their surroundings.
Yeah, it's brilliant. What did you make of Liverpool then? Without the ball, first of all, and then with the ball?
I liked, in terms of, I could see that Iriola was trying to put his mark on it. They had 27 attempts on goal, which just shows you how forward-thinking they are. The problem that we kind of suggested at the top of the show was the fact that when they did get into that final third, the final cross, the pass, the shot was really lacking. And that's the concern, is that even if Frimpong gets in those areas, he is lacking. I don't care about how quick he is.
I'm so glad you said this. This is what I'm hearing for the last 24, 48 hours. Frimpong, look, obviously defensively he's not great, which is true. I mean, I'm sure Jeremy Jacquet's thinking, Jesus, is this how this is going to work? I don't know about this. But everyone qualifies it by saying, but he's very good going forward. He's not very good going forward.
Do you know what it is?
He's not.
No, it's you see players who are busy and they move like that and they're running about and he looks dynamic but then you've got to step back and say, is he beating his man?
Totally.
What's that final cross like? It's really poor.
I agree totally, because there was a moment where he stood up his man, and for the first time, like, he beat him with, I was kind of I was at this point, I just sort of glanced away and I was looking up and stood up his man, and some good feet, and he got a cross in, and I thought, oh, fair enough. And then I realized, oh no, that was Ngoma. That wasn't Frimpong. He doesn't do it. He doesn't do anything with the ball.
And the flip side of that as well is that Kirkes is very similar on the left-hand side. Looks tenacious, angry, bashing into people. He had the most simple of crosses that would have give Isak a free header, and you just overhit it. And it happens so often. And then this is when you kind of think, okay, then if you're playing for Leverkusen Frimpong before, where you've got a back three behind you, and invariably you're in space because of the shape of the team. So you're in space to not really have to have a good first touch because there's no pressure on you.
Yes.
And likewise, Kirkes, bombing on, counter-attacking with Bournemouth. Now they're being comfortably getting up into those final third positions. They're going to have to take the ball with their back to play, do something on a half turn, and then put the quality in. They're below the standard required. They genuinely are. Those two are so far below the standard of Trent in that final third in terms of the final delivery and Robertson.
Yeah.
As much as we can malign Trent about his defensive qualities, it's not as if Frimpong is like an unbelievable defender like Timber or even Steve Finnan, those guys before him at Liverpool. No, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how that's going to go on.
I feel like a weight off my shoulder. I feel like I've been gaslit the last couple of weeks listening to this. So
it's true though, isn't it? It's true.
It's completely true. And but they're good going forward, and it just gets thrown out, and it's like, when, where?
Yeah.
So they've problems at fullbacks. In fairness, Xhaka has made a very good first impression. Would you say as centre half?
Yeah, he has. He certainly got all the attributes you want from the centre back in terms of recovery pace. He looks nice when he steps forward as well. He's just got to learn a lot about the Premier League because it's a tough one. And you're right, Joe. It's even tougher if your right back's not. If you're in a bit of trouble and you look over your shoulder, your right back's nowhere to be seen. Then it is even harder.
Yeah. So look, Damien last week made his feelings on Gakpo clear. Gakpo did okay. Ngom was a young player, and there's real talent there. But back to these kind of core positions again. So we were wondering, well, how's he going to use Wirtz? So he uses Wirtz as a number 10.
Yeah.
And I think, to be fair, the Wirtz on the left doesn't work. So I think he's gonna succeed or fail as a number 10. So it's Wirtz off Isak, and these two players have cost a lot of money, and I'm sure their highlights reel is really good on YouTube. It was a continuation of the theme last year. So Wirtz for you, I mean, with an hour to go when they need a goal, Iraola says, "You're my main playmaker. Yeah. Supposedly my guy who's going to create something is coming off." So that's very worrying for Wirtz. Penny, for his thoughts on the touchline as he sat there.
No, exactly that. And there was an opportunity there where he had a lovely left-footed strike. The goalkeeper makes a brilliant save, to be fair. Yeah. And you are for Wirtz's kind of Liverpool career and how he can impact in the Premier League in his second season. You're kind of hoping that goes in and the confidence builds in as such. And also there was an incredible ball laid back to Isak on his left foot where, there's no one near him. He's just got to hit the target and he blazes it over. And they're the moments where you then start thinking, well, hold on, what does that huge financial outlay actually bring you? And Isak is a proven performer in the Premier League. So you're kind of thinking it's not a case of you having to bed in here. I know he had the injuries and stuff, but he's able to cope with the fact that he knows the league and the price tag. You kind of give a bit more to Wirtz in terms of learning about the physicality of the Premier League. But I don't know, you look at that and you think, both of them now, you're thinking, when you think about Liverpool and their success over the years in the Premier League, massive numbers from Mane and Salah. And I don't think you're going to see that from those two guys.
The Isak one is strange because, as you say, he is a proven performer. Like Wirtz, there's now a question mark: is this league going to suit him? As lovely a player as he is, and you can see the craft and the technique and everything. But so that's a question mark over Wirtz now. But Isak, it shouldn't be a question mark. So that's why it's doubly strange. Shouldn't.
Yeah. And if you think, and we've talked so often, Joe, about Arsenal finding that really good top draw number 9. If Arsenal could get Isak now on the back of it not working out at Liverpool, they'd absolutely go for it, I would have thought.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. So it's difficult to kind of think, well, he ain't going to get the numbers, but yet we still think he's a quality player. So what is happening? It's up to Iraola then to make sure that there's consistently being chances created. And then they go back to the fact that we just said 27 attempts away from home. Whether or not they're speculative ones or not, it does show you that they are kind of getting numbers forward, but just that final quality was missing.
Look, it's early days. We can get carried away. Obviously, first game, but it is a continuation of last year. Anything else on Liverpool? Like, people thought Núñez was good when he came on, sharp and lively, and won the penalty. Look, Newcastle away is probably a tricky game in some respects. What's your overall take on Liverpool?
I think afterwards, Iraola was saying he was frustrated that they didn't win the game, but there was two massive chances for Vissa to take Newcastle to 3-1 up. So he could easily have run away from them. So with that in mind, you kind of think to yourself, okay, the timing of the late equaliser, a point away from home, it's not the best start, but you're happy with it. I think Iraola's not stupid enough to think that just because Newcastle's squad's been gutted, that it is going to be an easier game out there. That's up for the kind of like fans and us in the press to kind of think, well, they should easily win that. The realities are always slightly different. So there's no doubt. I think he looked at it, and I think at times he was slightly exasperated in terms of looking at it and thinking, well, listen, I'm come to Liverpool. I'm supposed to have superior quality, and yet we're leaving a lot of chances behind. We're getting into that final third, which is ultimately the most difficult thing to do, get into that final third with numbers and in good possession, good positions on the pitch. This didn't take advantage of it.
Yeah, okay. You've been itching to talk about Brentford.
Yeah, come on, Joe. This is our team this year,
Our
isn't it?
boys, our
These are our
boys.
boys. These are our boys. Yeah. No, I mean,
It was put to Keith Andrews in the match interview afterwards. Here he is, the ninth longest serving manager in the league. He was a year and a
yeah.
day, a year and a game.
Listen, we know back, like, we both know Keith, and we know that he's very good in front of the camera. And there's a lot of managers who are and not so good on the training field. Well, let me assure you, Keith is equally good on the training field and has identified that Duffer coming in to support the staff that he had last year will impact as well. So we can see it. But I just kind of looked at that game and thought, wow, this is a Tottenham team. I'm thinking about De Zerbi controlling possession. And I go back to my point again, Van Hecke and Senesi as two centre-backs who probably two of the best in terms of bringing that ball forward, breaking lines and stuff like that. That's all well and good. And Keith and his coaching staff and his team would have said, yeah, no problem. But can they do the stuff that ultimately you're judged from at centre-back? Can they deal with the high intensity? Can they deal with being turned? Can they be dealing in that first contact, those second balls? And they could not. And it was just, that could have been, Brentford literally could have won that game 5 or 6-0 and it wouldn't have done them a disservice. What a start to their season.
Yeah.
And Joe, the central midfielder. So we're talking about people coming in, Sangari coming in from Lens, right? So they're runners up to PSG in Ligue 1 last year. They win the cup, okay? He gets into the French team of the year ahead of João Neves, Fabien Ruiz. So you're thinking, how on earth have Brentford managed to get him for under £40 million or whatever it is, 40 million euros? And it just shows you, it's another example of their really astute recruitment. And it's just, he just bossed the game. He absolutely bossed the game against Tonali. And that was worrying as well for me in terms of De Zerbi, who I really like as a manager. I know he can be a bit kind of temperamental and wouldn't be easy for hierarchies to manage him from below. But he came out after that game and said, both my centre-backs are lacking match fitness and so is Tonali. And I'm thinking, well, if they are, don't take them to Brentford away because they will be asking you the questions where fitness has got to be your number one answer that you can live with it.
Well, it's a very interesting one. That just on Brentford and how they get a Sangare, who's 24 years of age. It's not like he's 31.
Yeah,
like he should be double the price based on that performance. But Billy Bean, the Moneyball Brad Pitt movie back in the day.
I love it.
He did an interview 18 months ago, and his right hand man, whose name escapes me now, has worked in football. He's worked at Roma, and he's been in England a little bit, and he's been around. And it's funny, he was asked about sabermetrics and football, and he said, the only two clubs that I've really seen use the numbers, and I mean use them, not, he said a lot of clubs like, oh yeah, they have like the dorks department, but deep down they don't really believe it. It's a bit of window dressing. He said Brentford and Brighton are the two.
Yeah, and it's the two owners there who came out of the same, they used to be in business together, both owners. Yeah. And they're those, they think analytically in their careers before they came into football, and then they've just brought it into football. And it's so important because you said that about, Frimpong, and you can see like the old fashioned kind of scout will go, yeah, he looks good and stuff like that. And then the modern day guy comes in. Now you can use them both sparingly, however you want to do it. But the modern day guy will come in and say, for example, at centre back, they'll say to me, oh, I like the look of this centre back. Okay, what's his stats? Does he win first contact? In a league now that is not that much of a priority, or it certainly wasn't until the last 18 months, where set pieces, throw-ins, having to deal with quick counter-attacks makes it more prevalent now than it ever did. And what it does is it exposes a generation of defenders who have never had to kind of deal with that physicality because they've come out of the academies or they've learned to play the Pep way, build up from the back, and not been asked those questions that we were in terms of having to deal with a big, robust centre forward, putting his elbow across your face, and where you go with that. But if you go down to the stats now and look at some of these teams or these players that are being recruited, you're thinking, how does he actually influence the game? Now, not how if he looks nice, he's easy on the eye. How does he influence the game? And Brentford are doing exactly that, because there'll be players coming in, you think, oh, he's not particularly nice to look at in terms of, Coyote at right back, kind of running past everyone, swinging his arms everywhere. He's not elegant, is he, as such, but effective.
Yeah.
And that's just one example. There's so many of them in terms of, and I love that now because, aesthetically, I would have been a player not particularly easy on the eye, but I learned as a young player that, I like to kind of do a nice little pass in the midfield, but I learned very quickly in the Premier League I'm not being judged on that. Essentially, I'm being judged on, can I win that first header? And I learned how to do it. So I don't know. I love it. I love the fact that analytical side is coming in. Listen, I don't get too carried away with it in terms of it, but it's got a massive role to play, and it's proven it.
Yeah. That said, old school, new school, stats, no stats.
Yeah.
If this guy's in the French team of the year, you'd say, well, let's get all the teams of the year, or the top 5 leagues, and have a look at who's in it and see if it throws up a name. So I mean, it's doubly strange they've managed to poach him for less than 40 million sterling.
And then you look at him as well, Joe, and you think about physicality, because the Premier League and certain managers have been guilty of going into the Eredivisie and finding technically gifted players, and then suddenly, and then straight away you go, he will not be able to transfer or transmit that to the hurly-burly of the Premier League, because he just won't be able to do it. And yet you look at him and think, wow, he looks like an athlete as well as a player.
He does, yes. He started the goal and finished the goal and was involved everywhere. 24 years of age, Mamadou Sangare in his debut. Just on Spurs, it's very interesting there, that point you made about fitness and Tonali's fitness. So look, the thing with Spurs is they have their captain in Van de Ven to come back. He's on kind of World Cup leave. So you have Archie Gray, a 20-year-old, as captain in his place at right back. Pedro Porro, who won a World Cup with Spain, is on leave. Maddison off the bench, ACL last year, coming back into it. Xavi Simons, Sarr tweaked a hamstring, Kulusevski. You know, there are quite a few to come back in, to be fair, not least in the back four. But it's very interesting, something that De Zerbi said. The quote-unquote tackle Lucas Bergvall made for the goal. He tried to roll the studs out. It was just, oh my God, don't.
Yeah, I'm thinking, you know, you've got the nod in midfield. You know, Fernandes not quite ready. There was a lot of talk about Bergvall leaving the club, that he wasn't part of De Zerbi's plans. Well, if you tackle like that, you're not going to be part of his future plans going forward, no.
And here's what De Zerbi said afterwards. So he said that the problem here, because Bentancur was fit, they could have put him in midfield. You know, 29 would have dealt with the physicality. So De Zerbi said, look, the thing is, in the pre-season, we worked more with Bergvall. And I think at the beginning of the season, when it's a new project, it's right to play with Bergvall. He's sort of saying, like, this guy's done all the training. He's been here. You know, I want to kind of create that, you know, if you've trained and you're doing well, you play. Yeah. But he said this, I knew before the game that Lucas Bergvall, in this type of game, he would suffer more than Rodrigo Bentancur, who's 29 years old and Lucas is 20. But I felt I had to play him. And I think if you're playing beside Bergvall, you're like, I don't give a shit. Like, don't play him. If you know he's going to struggle, don't play him. This isn't like everyone gets a medal stuff.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? I mean, I didn't see that quote, but that is incredible. Because if you're a Spurs fan, you're thinking, so you're good enough to recognise that that's going to be a problem.
It's a bad game for him, yeah.
Yeah, so you're not going to play him, are you? Oh, no, I'm going to play him. So you know he's going to struggle against the team that probably exposes second balls, physical challenge, but you're still going to play him.
Yeah.
And then that's when you start thinking, hold on a minute. What is happening there?
Yeah, it was a strange admission. Like that, I was like, that doesn't reflect well on you here. Like, we need someone rootless.
It's incredible, isn't it? It's just like, I don't know. Sometimes you think there's a little bit get lost in translation. I know his English is quite good, but he can't have meant. I mean, that makes no sense. So
I'll read I'll read it one last time. Before the game, I knew Bergvall in this type of game would suffer more than Rodrigo Bentancur, who's 29 and Lucas is 20. So I mean, if it's lost in translation, my apologies. There you go. Aston Villa, Tielemans, Konza, Rodgers, Watkins is going, Digne. 6 of the first team gone. Buendia's playing up front. They lose 4-0. That's a disaster. And then Man City, 2-1 win against Bournemouth. Mark Gay in midfield. They've lost Rodri. They've lost Rangers. Obviously, they have Ayoub Bouadi coming in. And this is, I mean, people would have seen with the World Cup, he's only 18, the kind of hair is flowing. He has 8 appearances for Morocco, was a French international. I mean, really does look like a player to come in. So that seems like it's going to happen for 100 million euro.
It's a lot of money. It's such a lot of money. I mean, he impressed in Europe last year. I was watching his games.
Right, okay.
And you could see, like, even he played with a heavily strapped knee at one game, I remember, and he was really good. But that's still a huge amount of money, isn't it, in terms of that? And I know that's probably indicative of where the transfer market is at the moment, but that was a strange. I mean, that's Maresca in a nutshell for me. I'm thinking, you've got 2 central midfielders on the bench. What are you playing Guehi at centre midfield for? It made no sense, considering that Diaz is so vulnerable to balls over the top in a way that we said about Maguire. Diaz, like he makes out like he's like this, but as soon as anyone goes after him, and makes him turn and face his own goal, he just can't cope with it. He's a brilliant footballer when the game's in front of him in terms of organising, getting his body into good positions if he's got time to do it. But if he hasn't, you saw it for the goal. It was, they were all over the shop. And then there's the flip side as well, Joe, is that at home, Manchester City are going to have a lot of possession. So invariably, your team's going to get up the pitch. And then you found Gahey in the 10 position, in and around the opposition's box on a half turn. You're thinking, I don't care how good you are at centre back on the ball. We've seen this before historically. Rio Ferdinand is a perfect example at Manchester United. Goes in a central midfield against Blackburn because he's a fabulous footballer. I just can't cope in there. And you're thinking, that is just, you know, when that's trying to be too clever for your own good. I'm thinking they're so lucky they got out of it. They really are with those 2 late goals. Don't get me wrong. I thought City started unbelievably well against Bournemouth and could have been 2 or 3 harder misses a sitter. And you're thinking this is kind of like similar stuff last year. Do you remember they were blowing teams away early on but weren't scoring? And invariably then they were being caught. And I thought it was going to happen yet again, but they managed to get that late winner.
Okay, one to watch. Brilliant stuff. Thanks so much. We'll chat in a couple of weeks.
Cheers, mate. Good luck.